A single touch lasting less than 3 seconds can trigger the release of enough oxytocin to make her think about you for the next 48 hours. And most men have absolutely no idea they're wasting this biological cheat code every single time they hug a woman. What I'm about to share with you isn't just theory, it's neuroscience. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where to place your hands, how long to hold, and the one micro movement that separates forgettable hugs from the kind she replays in her head before falling asleep. Here's something that genuinely frustrated me when I started researching this topic. Men are out here spending hours perfecting their opening lines, their dating profiles, their wardrobes, and then they greet a woman with a hug that feels about as romantic as a TSA paytown. A study from the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami found that appropriate physical touch increases feelings of trust by up to 47%. 47% from a hug. Not from buying expensive dinners, not from memorizing pickup lines, from a hug done correctly. But here's the thing nobody talks about. There's a massive difference between a hug and a hug that rewires how she feels about you. And that difference, it comes down to exactly where your hands go, the pressure you apply, the duration you hold, and one subtle movement that most men have never even heard of. I'm going to break down 7 specific touch points during a hug that create instant emotional shifts. But before we get into that, I need to explain why this works on a biological level, because once you understand the science, everything else clicks into place. And I'm also going to tell you about a mistake so common that I guarantee at least 70% of you watching have done it in the last month without realizing it was actively making her less attracted to you. Stay until the end, because the final technique I'm sharing is the one that genuinely surprised me. Research from Stanford University found it triggers the same neurological response as receiving a gift from a hug. No credit card required. Let me explain how your skin became the most powerful dating tool you never knew you had. Human skin contains approximately 5 million touch receptors. 5 million. And these receptors don't just register pressure, they send direct signals to the emotional processing centers of the brain. Dr. Helena Ling from the University of Gothenburg discovered a specific type of nerve fiber called catactile afferents. These nerve fibers exist for one purpose only. They respond exclusively to gentle, slow touch, and they directly stimulate feelings of pleasure and emotional bonding. This is important. These seat tactile afferents fire most intensely when touch moves at a speed between 3 to 10 centimeters per second. Faster than that, and her brain registers it as functional touch, like adjusting her jacket. Slower than that, and it feels intentional in a way that creates discomfort before you've established enough trust. So, right off the bat, you're learning something critical. The speed of your touch during a hug matters as much as where you touch. Most men grab, squeeze, and release. That's not a hug. That's a vending machine transaction. A proper hug that actually changes how she perceives you involves movement. Subtle, intentional movement at that 3 to 10 centimeters per second range that lights up her C-tactile afferents. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all areas of the body have the same concentration of these specialized nerve fibers. The back, specifically the upper back between the shoulder blades, has one of the highest concentrations. Meanwhile, areas that men instinctively gravitate toward during hugs often have lower concentrations of these receptors. So, you've potentially been targeting the wrong zones this entire time. Don't worry, I'm going to give you the exact map in the next section. Now we get into specifics. I've organized these from least intimate to most intimate because context matters. You don't use Zone 7 on someone you've just met. That's restraining order territory. Zone 1, the upper back placement. This is your foundation. When you hug her, your dominant hand goes flat against her upper back between her shoulder blades, not grabbing, flat, palm making full contact. The reason this works is twofold. First, it activates those cat tactile afferents I mentioned. Second, having your hand flat rather than curved suggests openness and warmth rather than possession or urgency. A study published in the journal Emotion found that participants who received hugs with full palm contact reported feeling significantly more supported than those who received hugs with curved or grabbing hand positions. Same hug duration, different hand positions, completely different emotional outcomes. Zone 2, the shoulder cradle. Your non-dominant hand has a job too. It should rest on her shoulder with your fingers naturally extending toward her upper back, but not overlapping with your other hand. This creates what's called a containment embrace. It signals protection without restriction. Here's a mistake I see constantly. Men place both hands at the same level on her back. This feels symmetrical, which might seem logical, but symmetrical positioning reads as impersonal. It's how you hug your aunt. The asymmetrical placement, one hand higher than the other, creates a more intimate and less formulaic sensation. Zone 3, the gentle gather. This is where movement comes in. Once you're in the hug, your upper hand makes one slow gathering motion. Not a rub, not a stroke, a gather. It's a subtle tightening of your embrace, pulling her maybe half an inch closer, lasting about 1 to 2 seconds. This movement tells her subconscious that you're choosing to bring her closer. It's active rather than passive. You're not just accepting a hug, you're actively wanting her closer. Dr. Tiffany Field, who directs the Touch Research Institute, has noted that static touch and dynamic touch produce measurably different hormonal responses. Dynamic touch, meaning touch that includes movement, produces higher oxytocin spikes. The gather is dynamic touch, disguised as a natural part of the hug. Zone 4, the breath sync. This isn't technically a touch zone, but it amplifies everything else. Once you're in the hug, take one slow, deep breath that she can feel. When you breathe deeply, your chest expands, creating a subtle pressure change she'll perceive against her body. Research on synchronization between humans shows that when two people unconsciously match their breathing, feelings of connection increase dramatically. By taking an obvious deep breath, you're inviting her nervous system to sync with yours. 83% of participants in a study on physical intimacy reported feeling more connected to partners who displayed synchronized breathing patterns. You don't have to tell her to breathe with you. Her parasympathetic nervous system picks up the cue automatically. Zone 5, the temple touch. This one requires existing comfort between you. If you've been on a few dates or you're already in a relationship, this is incredibly powerful. As you're in the hug, turn your head slightly and let your temple or cheek rest against the side of her head. This changes the hug from a body-to-body experience to something that feels more complete. It also positions you perfectly for what comes next, which I'll explain in a moment. The temple touch signals that you're not in a hurry. You're present. You're not already thinking about what happens after the hug. Presence is one of the most attractive qualities research consistently identifies, and this physical gesture communicates presence without a single word. Zone 6, the release delay. Notice I said delay, not hold. There's a difference. When the natural moment to release arrives, you hold for exactly 1 more second. Not 3, not 5, 1 additional second. This is based on research about expectation and reward systems in the brain. When something lasts slightly longer than expected, dopamine spikes. It's the same reason a song that holds its final note creates emotional impact. The 1-second delay triggers a micro spike of dopamine that gets associated with you. But here's the warning. 2 seconds or more starts to feel like you don't want to let go, which can create pressure. 1 second is the sweet spot. It's noticeable, but not uncomfortable. Zone 7, the exit touch. How you end the hug matters as much as how you perform it. As you separate, your hand that was on her upper back should trail slowly across her shoulder as you pull away. Not lingering, trailing. It maintains physical contact for an extra moment as you're separating, which softens the transition from connection to separation. Most men just release and step back. Cold, abrupt, transaction complete. The exit touch creates continuity. It says the connection isn't ending just because the hug is ending. Knowing how to touch is only half the equation. Knowing when to deploy these techniques multiplies their effectiveness. Greeting hugs and goodbye hugs are not created equal. Research from the University of North Carolina found that goodbye hugs are processed more emotionally than greeting hugs. The brain attaches greater significance to the last physical contact before separation. So if you're going to choose one hug to invest fully in, make it the goodbye hug. Use all 7 zones. The gathering motion, the breath sync, the release delay, the exit touch. This is the hug she'll be thinking about on her drive home. Greeting hugs can be slightly more casual. You can save zone 6 and 7 for the goodbye. This actually creates a subconscious comparison in her mind. The greeting hug was good, the goodbye hug was incredible. She'll notice the difference even if she can't articulate why. The worst time to attempt an intensive hug when she's clearly in a hurry or distracted. A perfectly executed hug on a woman who's checking her phone or scanning the room for someone else is useless. She's not neurologically available to process it. Wait for a moment when she's present. I promised I'd tell you about the mistake that's probably killing your hug effectiveness. And here it is, pulling away first. Multiple studies on attachment behavior show that the person who ends physical contact first is subconsciously perceived as having lower emotional investment. Every time you release a hug before she does, you're sending a signal that you're less committed to the moment than she is. Now, this creates an interesting dilemma. You don't want to cling, but you don't want to pull away first either. The solution is the release delay I mentioned in zone 6. You wait until you feel her begin to release. Then you hold for one more second. Then you execute the exit touch. This means you're technically releasing after she initiates the release, but the delay makes it feel like you're separating together rather than you chasing her withdrawal. Men who consistently release first report worse outcomes in relationship formation. Women describe them as harder to read or less interested than I thought. Meanwhile, the actual interest level might be identical. The hugs are just communicating the wrong message. So, you've executed these techniques. How do you know if they're landing? First signal, the lean in. If your embrace triggers a stronger lean from her, pressing more of her body against yours, that's a clear indicator her nervous system is responding positively. She's literally trying to increase the contact. Second signal, the exhale. A deep exhale during or immediately after the hug means her parasympathetic nervous system just activated. You've created relaxation, safety, comfort. Third signal, the linger. After the exit touch, watch her body. Does she stay in your personal space for a moment? Does she step back immediately? Staying in proximity after the hug ends suggests she didn't want it to end. Fourth signal, the touch return. Does she touch you back? A hand on your arm as you separate? Contact with your shoulder? Anything that maintains connection. This is called touch reciprocity, and it's one of the strongest indicators of building attraction. Here's something funny. Sometimes you'll execute these perfectly and get absolutely no visible response. This doesn't mean it failed. Some women have been socialized to hide their physical responses. The impact might be completely internal. You'll often notice the difference in how they text you later or their enthusiasm about the next meeting. The same techniques don't apply equally in every scenario. Context demands modifications. First date hug scale back. Use zones 1 through 3 maximum. You haven't built enough trust for the more intimate zones yet. The goal of a first date hug is to be slightly better than expected. Not overwhelming, not boundary pushing, just better than the awkward side hug she was probably bracing for. Established relationship hug. Go full expression. Use all 7 zones, but add one more element, verbalization. A quiet word spoken during the hug. Even something as simple as mom or hey, you adds an auditory component that creates memory anchors. Studies show that multi-sensory experiences are remembered more vividly than single-sense experiences. Comfort hug. This is when she's upset or stressed. Forget the technique playbook. In this context, your only job is duration. Research on stress response shows that hugs need to last at least 20 seconds to significantly lower cortisol levels. During a comfort hug, you let her determine when to release. No delays, no exit touches, pure responsiveness to what she needs. Friend zone hug, real talk. If you're trying to transition from friendship to something more, the hug is actually one of your best tools. A friendship hug is typically quick, symmetrical, and low pressure, introducing asymmetry, slowing down, adding the exit touch. These create cognitive dissonance. She'll notice something feels different even if she can't identify what changed. Remember when I mentioned research from Stanford about triggering the same neurological response as receiving a gift? Here it is. Dr. Neuroeconomist Paul Zak found that when hugs last at least 20 seconds, oxytocin levels rise enough to create genuine neurological bonding. But that's not the surprise. The surprise is that hugs of this duration, combined with what he calls supportive back contact, actually triggered reward centers in the brain similarly to receiving an unexpected gift. The key word is unexpected. Routine hugs don't trigger this response. Hugs that feel somehow elevated, more intentional, more present than usual, these create the gift response. Everything I've taught you in this video is designed to create that elevation. The techniques transform an expected routine hug into something that feels like a gift. And receiving that gift from you without you having spent a cent creates positive associations that money genuinely cannot buy. The irony is beautiful. Men spend hundreds on dates, experiences, and gifts trying to create positive feelings. Meanwhile, a free hug done correctly can trigger identical neurological rewards. So, how do you actually integrate this without becoming robotic? Because overthinking during a hug creates awkwardness that ruins everything. Practice in low-stakes situations first. Hug friends, hug family members, where appropriate. Focus on one zone at a time. Master the upper back placement until it's automatic. Then add the asymmetric positioning. Layer techniques until the complete sequence flows naturally. The goal is unconscious competence. You want these techniques available without conscious processing so that when you hug someone, you're genuinely interested in your fully present rather than running through a mental checklist. I'd estimate it takes about 3 weeks of intentional practice before this becomes automatic. That's 21 days of hugging people in your life with attention to technique. After that, your default hug will be dramatically better than it is today. A hug is not just a greeting. It's not just a farewell. It's one of the most powerful communication tools available to human beings, and now you understand how to use it properly. Most men will watch this video and do absolutely nothing. They'll think interesting and continue giving the same mediocre hugs they've always given. Some of you will actually implement these techniques. You'll notice changes in how women respond to you. You'll notice relationships progressing faster. You'll notice that physical connection comes more naturally. The difference between the two groups isn't knowledge. Both groups now have the same information. The difference is action. So here's what I want you to do. Not subscribe, not hit a bell. I want you to think about the next person you'll hug after watching this. Maybe it's tonight, maybe it's tomorrow. I want you to consciously implement just one technique from this video. The upper back placement, the exit touch, the release delay. Just one. That's your commitment. One technique, one hug, see what happens. And once you've experienced the difference, you'll naturally want to add more. You won't need me to tell you to practice. You'll practice because you'll have felt the results yourself. Now here's the thing, understanding how to touch her is only half of the equation. You also need to recognize when she's touching you, because here's something most men completely miss. Women communicate attraction through touch constantly, but they do it in ways that seem accidental. They're absolutely not accidental. That video appearing on your screen right now breaks down the exact touches she uses when she's interested. The ones disguised as casual contact that are actually deliberate signals. It's called when she touches this. It's not an accident. It's a clear sign. Consider it the second half of what you just learned. You now know how to touch her. That video teaches you how to read when she's touching you. Click it. Watch it, because combining both skills, that's when everything changes.